Hey, welcome to my fifth and final ACT video. These problems do get harder as you go along. Today we're going over that last set, so these are going to be the hardest 12 questions of this practice ACT test. I do have the link for that down below if you want to try it out yourself. Otherwise, keep watching. So for our first problem here, we're going to use some problem solving, and then we're going to use our average or mean formula. So they tell us there's 5 numbers and that our mean and median are the same. So I'm starting by listing the 4 numbers they gave us from least to greatest. Now we want to find out what that 5th number is. If it was 14, our median would be 14. If it's larger than 14, if I go to find that middle, it's still 14. And if it's less than 14, again, if I go to find that middle, it's still 14. So I notice no matter what, my median is going to be 14, which means my average or my mean is going to be 14 since those are equal. So then I can use my average formula, which is just adding up all my numbers, which if I add those up, I get 52 plus that 5th number I'm trying to find, x, divide it by however many numbers total there are, and that's going to equal your average, which we decided is 14. Once you have that set up, it's just a 2-step equation. So multiply both sides by 5 and subtract off 52 to get that x would be 18, option E. Number 2 is using our knowledge of transformations, which you may know that negative in front means to flip it over your y-axis or your line of symmetry. So you can see here I'm drawing, if I were to flip that function over my axis of symmetry, how would it look? Another way is you could mess around with your graphing calculator, seeing how the negative affects it, and use that knowledge to help you do this. Number 3 is an example of a proof. They give us our statements and reasons, and we have to put them in order. So first of all, you always want to end with what you're trying to prove. So we want to end with 5, so I'm going to go ahead and eliminate B and E. After that, I notice you want to start with whatever you're given, which is the midpoint. All right, so that gives us our equivalent sides. We're also given equivalent angles, and you might notice these vertical angles here. If I make them congruent, which I can, so I gotta first say that they're vertical, and then that means that they're congruent. Now I have my angle side angle, so I can say that's third statement, and so then I've got my order there, which is looking like option D. For number 4, we have some equations here that we want to then figure out which number is the largest number. So you might know whenever you're multiplying something by something larger than 1, so 2, 5, 10, your number is going to get bigger. So notice here they're all equaling t, so when I'm multiplying something larger than 1, it's going to get bigger. So that means that that number, w, is smaller than t, because I have to multiply it by something bigger than 1 to make it larger. Okay, that means anything smaller than 1, so that 0.99 and that 0.23 is going to give me a larger number. And obviously the smallest is going to give us the largest. So we would choose option I, which is Z. Number 5 is a pretty tricky one because everybody's forgotten how to add fractions when they get to this point for some reason. But when you're adding fractions, you have to have a common denominator, which you can always find by multiplying those denominators together. So I'm going to use a common denominator of k times k plus 5. From here, we have to create our equivalent fractions. So that first fraction there, and also I'm just noting that I'm leaving it like that. I'm not multiplying out the k because you can see in my options of answers, that's an option. So my first fraction I'm multiplying by k plus 5, so I have to take 5 times k plus 5, which gives me 5k plus 25. Same thing for my second fraction, except for I'm multiplying that one by k, so I have to take that k plus 3 times k, so k times k is k squared, 3 times k is plus 3k. Then from here, we're going to add up our top, and then keep our bottom denominator. So k squared doesn't have anything to combine with, 5k and 3k can combine to get 8k, and then again 25 doesn't have anything to combine with, and that's all going to be over that common denominator we found, k times k plus 5, which you will see is actually option E. Number 6 is on multiplying matrices or using the dot product. So you're basically going to multiply on this way as you're seeing here. So that second part, you're going to multiply onto the second rows, which those are representing the cost per pound of rice flour for restaurant 1 and restaurant 2, market 1 and 2. So that would be our option J. Number 7 is looking at the area of a circle and how that increases as your angle increases. So not technically area of a circle, but area of a sector of a circle. So you'll notice here I have one angle that's smaller, has a smaller area. My larger angle has a larger area. We do know our area is pi r squared, which we're given our radius is 1. So our area of the whole circle would be pi, or 3.14. Then from there, you want to multiply that by whatever the angle is over 360. So you're noticing here, this is a linear equation, right? We have 1x, it's our angle value. And as our x goes up, our y is going to go up, which our only linear equation is option A. So number 8 is an example of a composite function. So we have h of x and g of x, and they want us to find g of h of 2. So with these, you always want to start on the very inner part, so h of 2. So I'm going to go to my h of x function, and instead of x, I'm going to replace it with 2. So we have 2 to the third plus 2, which is just 8 plus 2, which gets us 10. So we know that inside part is 10. So from there, we want to find g of 10. So then I'm going to go to that second equation there, and instead of x, I'm going to replace it with 10, just like I replaced my x with 2 before. So g of 10 is going to equal 2 times 10, which is 20, plus 3 gets me 23, option J. Number 9 is a trig problem using the law of sines, which they do give you there in that note. And so we are wanting to find the distance between A and B. So we can use the law of sines down there to set that up, because we know sine of our angle over the side across from it equals sine of an angle over the side across from it. So sine of 60 over x, because that's what we want to find. And then we're also given the side of 18, which we don't know that angle, but we do know our other angles are 60 and 45, and that a triangle makes 180 degrees total, so it would have to be 75. Now we just use proportions, so cross multiply and divide. Sine of 60 times 18 divided by sine of 75, which gives us option E. So number 10 is using your knowledge of area of squares and how to set up an equation. So they give us the smaller square is x by x, the larger square is c by c, and we want to know how much larger the area of the second is than the first. So first of all, we know our first smaller square is just x times x, x squared, and then here I am getting my second square, which is going to be x plus the c squared. So you might think I, but remember we want to know how much greater than it is. So I actually have to subtract those things. So I'm going to FOIL this out first, so that x plus c times x plus c to get x squared plus cx, so 2cx plus c squared minus x squared, which is going to cancel out, and I'm left with 2cx plus my c squared, which is option J. Number 11, believe it or not, we're going to use some Pythagorean Theorem here. So we have this cube where each side is half of an inch, and we want to find that diagonal there. So first thing I'm going to do is find the diagonal of my base, because I know that that's cutting that in half to make a right triangle. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared is what I'm doing here. To get that, it's the square root of 1/2. From there, you can set up a second equation. You'll kind of see that triangle that we've made to then find that question mark side. You can see I'm drawing it in here. So we know that side's half. We know the other side is square root of 1/2, and we want to know that third side. So again, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we know that that side that we just found is square root of 1/2 squared, plus that up and down side is half. squared equals y squared. Our square root and squared is just going to cancel off there. So we have a half plus a fourth, which a half is the same as 2/4, so 3/4 is going to equal our y squared. And then remember, you do have to get rid of that squared by taking the square root. So we end up with square root of 3/4, which you can break that up, square root of 3 over square root of 4, which square root of 4 is 2. So the most simplified version is going to be square root of 3/2, giving us option E. And we have finally made it to the last question of this section, question 12, where we're using our knowledge of trig functions, which if you have your negative on the inside, that's just the same as bringing that out to the outside. So we want to know which of these is equivalent. So first of all, cosecant is the same as 1/sine. So negative cosecant is going to be the same as negative 1/sine. So if we have sine times 1/sine, or negative 1/sine rather, those signs are just going to cancel out, and I'm left with -1, which is our option F. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to study with me, and feel free to check out the other 4 videos of this series, which I will have linked in the description box below.